Welcome back to Eyes on Israel. On November 29, 2023, a few months ago, a violent mob of pro-Hamas demonstrators caused a riot in New York City. The context for the riot was the annual Christmas tree lighting ceremony at Rockefeller Plaza, the traditional kickoff of the Christmas shopping season in New York. Similar demonstrations took place in other cities, most notably in London, where jihad-supporting demonstrators disrupted Christmas shopping on Oxford Street and Piccadilly Circus in solidarity with Hamas. And in Italy, the traditional Christmas Eve performance at the La Scala Opera House in Milan was disrupted also by anti-Israel pro-Hamas protesters. The rioters at Rockefeller Plaza Christmas tree lighting were chanting, "Long live the Intifada," and "Christmas is canceled," which is a bit of a head-scratcher to say the least. You see, while New York is the city in America with the highest concentration of Jews, I don't think too many of them participate in Christmas celebrations. I'm sorry to state the obvious, but Israel is not a Christian country. Jews do not celebrate Christmas. Christians make up only 2% of the population of Israel. So why do the enemies of Israel think it appropriate and on point to disrupt a Christmas celebration? The day after the Rockefeller Plaza Christmas tree riot, Steve Bannon, the most influential voice in the America First movement, played footage of the riot on his show War Room. After leading with footage of the violence, Bannon then said the following.
I keep telling people and reminding people this is not about Israel. This is not about the Jewish people. This is not about Jews. And everybody's trying to put that in there is missing what is going on. See what you see. This is a Sharia supremacist global movement powered by the Chinese Communist Party in the back that is funding the mullahs in Persia, in Tehran, in partnership with the criminal element of the KGB, in Moscow with Erdogan, the individual who wants to reestablish the Ottoman Empire, his words, not mine, and the Gulf Emirates. And people better wake up on this. I'm talking about people on our side of the football. There's a lot of whining going on. You have to see what you see what's going on here. It's not that difficult. You have to do some work. Maybe you have to put away some prejudices. This is not about Israel. It's not about the Jewish people. That's part of it, but overall, that's actually a small part of it. This is about you. This is about your civilization. This is about your culture. This is about your society. This is about your country. And last night, about your traditions and your beliefs and your families and your children.
In recent episodes of this show, we've talked about the growing pro-Israel coalition we're seeing among nationalist Christian conservatives worldwide, from the Israeli flag-waving Bolsonaro supporters in Brazil to the Geert Wilders supporters in the Netherlands. Wilders displayed an Israeli flag in his campaign headquarters a few months ago. What Steve Bannon is pointing out is that what these conservatives elsewhere in the world understand, that Israel's war with Hamas is the front lines of a global battle for Judeo-Christian Western civilization, is somehow not getting through to a significant number of Christian, America First conservatives in the United States. Notable examples, for example, are Tucker Carlson, who has called for a ceasefire in Gaza, effectively calling for Hamas to not be removed from power, and Candace Owens, another influential conservative who has accused Israel of genocide. Let me say this plainly. Israel's fighting an enemy that seeks to destroy not only Israel and all Jews everywhere, but the West in general and the United States in particular. The failure of intelligent people who profess traditional Judeo-Christian values here in America is shameful and dangerous. One important and influential voice on the American right who does see things clearly is Mark Meckler. Mark Meckler is president and co-founder of the Convention of States. Mark Meckler, welcome to Eyes on Israel.
Rabbi, thank you for having me.
So Mark, you heard my intro, and I find this issue very concerning, and we talked a little bit off the air about how we're going to deal with this question today. What is it that people on, to use Bannon's term, on our side of the football, what is it they're missing that their ideological compatriots worldwide are seeing clearly?
Well, I actually think there are two layers to this. I mean, first of all, I think some of them are just plain what I would call proto-isolationists. They have the fantasy that if America withdraws from the world, that everything will be fine, everything will be good here in the United States of America, will be unaffected by world events. And to put it simply, that's a fantasy. It's belied by all of modern history. The world is a very small place. What happens in Israel will happen here in the United States and around the world. And they just have to grow up and stop being children about world affairs. World affairs are complex, they're messy, they're dirty, and we're involved in them whether we like it or not. And if we try to withdraw, it will come to our shores. So I think that's the first level. And I think the second level is we are seeing certainly for the first time and the most dramatically in my lifetime. I'm 62 years old. I'm a Jew and I grew up in Los Angeles. We're seeing a rise of anti-Semitism, actual straight up anti-Semitism that I've never seen in the United States of America. We're seeing it on the college campuses where we expect a bit of radicalism. But what now, as you pointed out in Bannon's monologue, we're seeing it on the streets of New York and major cities all around the United States. So there are two layers to this, just the proto-isolationists and those that are actually fostering anti-Semitism.
So, people in the America First movement, and I think you really diagnosed the problem. I like to put it this way. They take the concept of America First and they think that they can turn it into America only, which really is just so short-sighted in terms of how the world works these days. But what's the message to these people? And do you think that any of it is really a kind of right-wing anti-Semitism that is under the surface of this ambivalence about what's going on in Israel?
I'm not sure I would call it right-wing anti-Semitism because I don't think it's actually a movement. I don't think it's coordinated in any way. And the vast majority of those who express it would recoil at the idea of being called anti-Semites. Candace Owens at the top of the list, Tucker Carlson, who I consider a friend, near the top of the list for the things he's saying. But when you say that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza, I mean, first of all, to be very blunt, Rabbi, you're just unintelligent because it doesn't by any standards meet the meaning of genocide. The Palestinian population has grown dramatically since the start of Israel, literally, and it's continuing to grow today. Genocide means a wiping out of an entire genetic population. Israel could do this with total air superiority over the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. They've chosen not to do it. Instead, they're going in on the ground, putting their soldiers at risk, hundreds of their soldiers now having been killed because of the choice to protect the civilian population. So using the term is either literally just stupid, just unintelligent, or it is a symptom of anti-Semitism. In other words, the Jews will be held to a different standard than anybody else in the world. It has been this way essentially since the beginning of time, and they are forwarding that trope.
I think that's a great point. That to call it anti-Semitism it's almost giving it too much credit for being a comprehensive ideology, and it's just really coming from shallow ignorance. But I think it's also America First people have a legitimate gripe against the United States pouring out billions of dollars in foreign aid. And because of the cynicism about what's going on in Ukraine, and I don't want to get into that topic, that's not my lane, but I certainly think a lot of the cynicism about it is justified. But they've thrown support for Israel into that same bucket. Now, I'm not a huge fan, honestly. I'm not a huge fan of America's support for Israel because it turns out we now realize that a lot of that support is used as leverage for the United States to have a say in Israel's national security decisions to Israel's detriment. And Israel would probably be better off. I, along with Caroline Glick and some others in Israel, actually advocate for a drawdown of that assistance. But I think that a lot of people in the America First movement don't understand that assistance to Israel is not the same as other foreign aid that goes to other nations.
No, what this actually is the point of the spear in the United States fight on the war against terror. And the war, I don't even like that term. I would say the war against radical jihadists, against people who would impose Sharia law worldwide. And Islam has always been this way. This has never changed. I mean, this is one of the astounding things about the historical growth of Christianity versus Islam. Christianity went through the reform. It became a non-militarized religious force for good instead of a force for evil, which sometimes it was under military expansion of Christianity, but it had a reform. That has not happened with Islam. Islam is now an ancient religion which has always spread by the tip of the sword, and they profess this. They intend to dominate us both religiously and theocratically. There is no difference in Islam between a system of governance and a system of religion. It is fundamentally incompatible with the way that the West is governed.
Yeah, so I think that what we're seeing then is that there are pockets on the right in the camp that you and I both identify with in America who kind of have their head in the sand and aren't recognizing that there is a civilizational battle going on. And that Israel is really just the front lines in the kinetic way of this battle. But this battle culturally is raging just as hot in America as anywhere. I'm fond of saying, I'm not fond of it, it's a sad thing, that the jihadists are taking over America without firing a shot.
Yeah, I think that's correct. They've taken over our institutions. Look, it's largely a function of money that's flowing through our institutions, money into corporations, money into government, money into our university systems. They have, because of the oil industry, almost an infinite flow of money comes out of the Qataris, the Saudis, and they are propagating this ideology of Islamic hatred all around the world. And it is deeply ensconced here in the United States, and especially so on our campuses. And I think sometimes we on the right ignore the campuses to our peril. We're like, they're a bunch of crazy kids doing crazy protests. Those kids, especially at the elite campuses, are going to go on and run the largest organizations in the country, the largest corporations. They're going to be in positions of high government power, and that brings with it this incredible rabid anti-Semitism and the idea that the West is evil.
All right, Mark Meckler, just tell our listeners how they can follow you, how they can, I know you get a little hot on social media sometimes. Tell us how people can follow you, and thank you for being on Eyes on Israel.
Yeah, the best place they can get me is at Mark Meckler on Twitter or at conventionofstates.com.
All right, we'll be right back with more Eyes on Israel right after this.